Hello and welcome to this short webinar with regards to integration of JD Edwards Enterprise One with enterprise cloud apps, mobile apps, social apps, e-commerce applications, and plethora of different possibilities that are available today to integrate your E1 to the outside world. My name is Ali Naseem, and I represent eFlux. We are experts when it comes to integrating JD Edwards to all these different third-party applications that I talked about. So the format for today's webinar is that you can use #integrate E1 hashtag to ask any questions, give any comments, any feedback during the webinar or at the end of it, and we'll make sure that we respond to most of them. So let's dive right into the webinar agenda. Before we go there, let's take a quick look at the safe harbor statement just to make sure that we are covered with regards to the claims that we're going to make during the presentation. So take a quick read for the safe harbor statement. Next, let's take a look at the agenda for the presentation. So first of all, we're going to ask the key question as to why business services have all of a sudden become so important. What has changed, really? Then we're going to take a look at different scenarios where business services are required for integration purposes. Third, we are going to take a look at AIS and IoT. These are the alternatives to the standard BSSV services. And lastly, we're going to take how does eFlux approach an E1 integration project. Okay, so to start out, let's take a look at the list of the different scenarios that we're going to cover today. So we're going to take a look at how E1 integrates with enterprise cloud apps, how E1 integrates with mobile and social apps, and how it integrates with e-commerce and customer portals. Lastly, we are also going to take a look at how does E1 integrate with your SOA middleware. So why business services? That's the key question. And that will become a foundation for all the different other scenarios we're going to discuss. So let's take a look at what used to happen before. You had your E1 server and you had your third-party systems. And you had to exchange the data between the two. You had to integrate the data between the two. So what you had basically was a batch processing. You had your UBEs, you would upload the flat files, you would download the flat files, you had the file upload mechanism between your batch process, and you had the file download process. And then, as a bridge, you had the Z tables and Z applications to kind of provide an interface between your flat files and the actual transactional data. So that everything can be corrected and taken care of, and all the different business rules can be applied. However, here are the problems that are inherent to this sort of an approach. First of all, it is not real time. It's slow and sluggish, as you all know. It's not a very happy scenario when you actually have to integrate through a Z-table process or a batch upload. It's very error prone because of the inherent issue where you have to do a complete file batch. There could be errors within that. You have to debug them. You get an error report and you have to find it out and then correct it and get back. So it's a very error prone mechanism. And to add to it further, the error correction is not real time either. So it's an offline process to correct the error, and you have to restart the whole process, the whole batch process again, but after correcting the specific error rows. And lastly, but very importantly, it has a very bad user experience, especially when you compare to what happens, what are the expectations from the end users and your end consumers today. So you've got your E1 server, and you have a plethora of different third-party applications. You've got your customer portal, you've got your mobile apps, you've got your social networks, you've got your enterprise cloud apps, and you've got your middleware as well. And all driven by the need from the customer to have a real-time experience and real-time notification of the data that is being transferred from your core ERP to the different channels and devices that the customer interfaces with. So, most of you would agree that that sort of a batch process approach would simply not fit here. It would simply, piss off the end customer. And by the time you'll be able to do that integration and alert the customer back, the customer would have been long gone from the channel that they were interacting with. They used to very personalized as well as real-time sort of notification and alerts and integration sort of scenarios. So this is exactly where your business service server fits in. So your business service server sits between your event server and all these different applications. It provides an integration repository, you can think of it as a library of some pre-built integrations that you can make use of. It gives you a service provisioning mechanism, which is, it can expose different use cases and different C business functions and different internal event processes to the outside world through service providers. So you can write provider services. Then you can also have service consumer. What that basically means is that your event server or your event applications, your P applications, can now consume a third-party service in the real time. And finally, the most important part, you have an event notification which allows for a real-time integration. So if something changes within your manufacturing module, something changes with your human capital management module, you get a real-time alert, and that real-time alert can be used to invoke a service consumer, which then in turn can invoke these third-party applications using a protocol called SOAP, which is Simple Object Access Protocol. And you can do this integration both ways, which is you can provide services to the outside world and you can consume services from the outside world, all in the real time. So if you compare that to the batch processing approach, there's a lot of benefits that you get with this approach. First of all, it is a real-time integration, and nothing can beat that, to be honest. Then you've got a standards-based approach where SOAP and XML web services are all standards, and any platform complies to them, irrespective of which programming language they've been written on. So if you've got a mobile app written in iOS, or you've got it on an Android, if you've got a CRM portal on .NET, or is it on Java enterprise application, whichever language or platform your outside applications are written, they all understand the XML-based web service format, which Business Service Server utilizes. You've got auto error correction, you've got error mechanisms built in, so you have a fault tolerance built into the service call mechanism. You can log those errors, you can take action in the real time and do all those different things. Then you also get a real-time notification. So think about it like a Facebook alert functionality. Whenever something changes, someone tags you into a Facebook post, you get a notification real time. It does not wait for a batch to upload or download and do all that. Same is the expectation of today's user with the enterprise applications as well. And that's where the real-time notifications with this sort of integration framework is a killer. Lastly, all of this turns into a good user experience or a good customer experience for your end consumers. And this is a big deal. Now let's kind of take a look at more of a technical architecture so that we kind of, as solution architects and developers, can have a bird's eye view of where does the business service server resides within the overall J.D. Edwards even ecosystem. So this is where your business service server resides. You're going to just mark it up a little. And it integrates with your enterprise server through a protocol which allows your Java service to call the C business functions, or for your Java service to be able to call the table IO functionality directly to from your transactional tables. Then you've got the HTML server, which basically is the even front end anyways, and it utilizes either a WebSphere or a WebLogic at the back. Then you've got a transaction server. The same transaction server, the way it is utilized within your even transactions can be utilized for your business services transaction as well. So it kind of builds upon all that you already got in terms of the transaction processing capability of your event server. Then you've got a security server, which allows you to authenticate what sort of external third-party applications can call the different services. So you definitely don't want to allow all the different services exposed to all the different third-party products, right? So you would like to maintain which even user has the right to call which business service, and that proxy user can then be used for the service call invocation both ways. Okay, now there are two ways how you can integrate your E1 to the third-party applications. One is either directly to a third-party product, or you could use a SOA or enterprise service bus as a middleware, so that you don't have a point-to-point integration, but rather you have an orchestrated business process execution language, which can then in turn connect with third-party products. Or the other option is directly connecting with the third-party product. Depends on how complex your integration is, how complex your process is, how many systems it needs to touch, and you can kind of decide accordingly. But the best practice approach is to go with the SOA middleware layer. Okay, now we're going to take a look at how does E1 integrate with an enterprise cloud app using Business Service Server. We're going to take a very high-level look on this, and if somebody's interested, we'll take a deeper dive offline. So you've got your E1 server here, and then you've got different enterprise cloud apps ranging from Adobe Marketing Cloud to Salesforce to Oracle Service Cloud, Oracle Marketing Cloud, Oracle HCM Cloud, and so many others that keep popping up. The Business Service Server, as I told earlier, resides between the two and provides an integration layer which is based on SOAP-based standards. So all of these third-party cloud-based, these enterprise cloud apps, they understand SOAP, and your business service server understands SOAP. So that's the integration protocol right there. You can write your business services to expose different use cases and different C business function from core functionality from E1, and you can expose that for the outside world to invoke it. And also you can consume these external services through their API. You can invoke their API and get the data from the external cloud-based applications to get the data back into your transaction server. So a quick example for this, okay, let's take different scenarios that you can use for enterprise cloud app integrations. For example, you have a sales order entry. Let's say you have a sales cloud or a CRM, which is hosted on the cloud. A new order is booked from your CRM, and you can do a sales order entry process. So you can invoke a sales order entry business service, which is a service provider from the cloud app, and the sales order can be then entered into your transactional tables within E1. You could do an inventory sync. So for example, if you need to get the data in your inventory needs to be updated in your service cloud, for example, if you are doing a maintenance at a client side and you have to replace a certain part, you got to do an inventory sync in the real time. Your service operator has a mobile app and needs to quickly check on whether there's a certain service part in stock. You can do an inventory sync there. It could be an HCM payroll integration, whereby you are processing or you're recruiting your employees in a cloud-based applications, and your benefit system is outside, your other systems, HR system are outside, but your key payroll process is within your HCM module or within your financials module. So you can integrate your HCM payroll through Business Service Server. You could generate service billing invoices. For example, if you are using a service cloud and you have generated a customized bill for your customer that needs to be integrated with your financials module within E1, that can be taken care of in real time, so that as soon as you have the service bill created, it gets synced directly into your financials module instead of having to wait for a nightly process for a batch upload to kind of make sure that all things are there. And also the error, as we talked about, real-time error correction mechanism is right there, so that all the errors are corrected and then synced accordingly. Let's take a look, as we talked about, let's take one example of how integration can happen between your E1 and a cloud-based application. So take an example of Oracle Service Cloud, and we won't spend much time here, but I'll just try to explain a quick overview. So here you've got a service cloud, which is a CRM. It provides a Connect PHP API, and it has its own object model, and it has different applications in there. You've got your event server here, and then again, the BSSV server is sitting right in the middle and making sure that the PHP API is communicating with your business service server using standard-based SOAP protocols, so the back and forth can happen and different scenarios can be taken care of. Okay, now let's move on to the mobile and social apps. Now, here's the fun part. Especially your users on the mobile phone behave very differently as opposed to when they are on a browser or a PC. They think of mobile apps as very personalized devices, so they would like to have real-time notifications. As soon as they do something, they've got to have a response. They can't wait for more than a few seconds to get a response. So this integration got to be really real-time. Same is the case with your social app on your social networks as well. So let's take a quick look again what scenarios are there that are required for integration between your event server and your mobile and social apps. So your mobile and social apps can be either native apps, iOS, Android, Windows Mobile, or whatever, or they could be browser-based apps like using a phone gap or an ADF mobile runtime. Now there are two approaches here. One approach that we already discussed, which is the business service server approach, using SOAP protocol. However, there's a key issue with SOAP itself as well. It's a kind of it's not very lightweight. It requires a bit of an overhead, and the communication between your mobile app and your core ERP using SOAP is not as user-friendly or as super fast as the other protocol, which is REST protocol is, and we're going to take a look at what that is. So there's another option that even has made available, which is application interface services, which uses the REST API, which uses JSON instead of XML to transfer the data back and forth between your mobile apps and your event server through application interface server. Now let's take some scenarios where this sort of integration between mobile apps and your core event server will be required. Location-based service, maybe you want to check in to your store, somebody walks in, you want to give a real-time coupon based on their vicinity. So that needs to connect to your CRM, it needs to connect with your mobile app, it needs to connect with your core billing system so that a relevant offer can be generated and can be honored. It could be field force automation. So if you've got a support or sales field force out there, the customer side, they could have an enterprise mobility app where they are requesting a quote, and that request for quote is coming back to your event server in the real time. A relevant user is being notified, and if there's an automated quote generation mechanism or business rule, that can return the actual quote based on the different parameters that the field force agent has set on the mobile app, and can get the response back real quick. It could be a real-time collaboration need. For example, you have a kind of enterprise social network within your enterprise, which is enabled through a mobile app as well. So somebody at the customer side has a quick question, and there's a subject matter expert sitting in a different region somewhere within your enterprise, so they can quickly tag in that person or get some real-time collaboration happen between two different departments. And this is again one of the scenarios where your mobile app needs to be integrated with your core event server using REST API. Notification and approvals. As I said, notifications, getting the data back is really important for your end consumers and also your employees. And an approval scenario could be there. So if there's a customer, if there's an employee who's raised a requisition, and there's his manager, she can take a look at that and can approve it using a mobile app. So instead of having to log into your event server and going through that all the hassles and then approving it, you can simply get a notification on the mobile app and approve it right there. Lastly, a lot of different consumer apps could be the need for you. So you need a customer-facing mobile app that needs to be integrated to your backend processes where your REST-based API would be handy. Next, we'll take a quick look with e-commerce and customer portals. What is the scenario there? You've got different open source and different enterprise-grade e-commerce systems that are deployed within your shops. You would, again, need to integrate your enterprise server with that. You can use either SOAP using business services, or you could use REST using application interface services. And some of the scenarios would be sales order entry, inventory sync between back and forth, so that your e-commerce system knows how many items for that particular product SKU is in stock, for example. Order processing, once the customer hits the buy now button and the order has been processed, that order needs to be sent to your event server so that all the pick slip can be generated, the shipment can be made, and then you need to track that shipment as well. So different scenarios can be applicable based on which industry and what sort of sales, e-commerce sales process you've got on your website. Lastly, there might be scenarios where you have to integrate your event with not one process, that needs to integrate your event with not just one system, but many systems together. So for example, you've got your event server, and then you need to integrate your e-commerce system with a mobile app, with some enterprise cloud apps, all together within one process. So you, instead of doing a one-to-one, point-to-point integration with business service server with each of these systems, a better approach would be that you have a SOA middleware with which your business service server integrates, and the business process engine within SOA server actually calls these other third-party products and orchestrate that within the business process execution language, so that so basically when the API changes for one of these e-commerce vendors or some of the social apps, you don't have to change the core integration itself. All you need to change is you can isolate that area, and you can just change the updated API or updated adapter for that particular cloud app or a mobile app or social app, etc. So that's more of a best practice as opposed to P2P integration. Okay, here's a bonus for you. So there's something very recently launched by JD Edwards, which is IoT Orchestrator. And IoT Orchestrator makes use of your AIS. So a quick comparison between your BSSV and AIS, we already touched upon that. BSSV is good for your integration with your enterprise cloud apps or other systems, whereas your AIS is much more suited when it comes to real-time, super fast integration between your mobile apps or other chatty applications like your social networks, etc. IoT, which is Internet of Things, like smart devices. If you have a manufacturing concern, could be different smart devices within your production line. If you're a construction company, there could be different smart devices on your construction sites. If you're an oil company, there could be a lot of smart devices within your upstream operations, and so on and so forth. So all of the data that needs to be collected from these IoT devices needs to be integrated with different applications, and that has to be really fast, because it's very real time. There's no buffering as such. There can't be any batch processing, and even there can be a overhead with SOAP carries. So they are usually, in fact, they are used on top of your AIS. And you can take a quick look here. So you've got your E1, you've got your AIS server, and then you've got your IoT orchestrator, which consists of a registration process, which allows it to register some of the devices, smart devices. There's a rules engine, which orchestrates the business process. And there's an action service request sort of API, which integrates with your, using REST, it integrates with your application interface services, which in turn integrates with your core event server. Here are some of the building blocks that we've already covered. I'll just take a quick look. Pictorial view. You've got the devices, the smart devices, and you've got a gateway. You've got a whitelist here so that you don't have every smart device in the world connecting to your core event server. So you've got a whitelist of devices that are allowed to get in. You've got a rules engine where your orchestration happens. You cross-reference it to different service requests within inside of your AIS server, which in turn then calls the service request to your JDE core apps. And that's pretty much about different integration options available with the event server. Now let's take a look at how eFlex approaches an event integration project. So the first consideration that we do is the master data management. Because most of the time, the companies jump into an integration project without much of a homework, without defining enterprise-wide how the data needs to be represented across different systems. So if you have a customer data, is it a first name, last name? You capture a social security number. What is the format for your address? What is the format for all the different things? So all that data format definition has to be taken care of as an enterprise-wide exercise before you can take on any integration work, really. And most of the enterprises, they get badly stuck if they don't do this exercise. So it's a key thing that if you already have some sort of a basic data management structure available within your enterprise, because BI, business intelligence products also utilize that. So you have basic working done there. We kind of review it just to make sure that they are closer and compliant with the integration interfaces that they're going to be integrating with. So you kind of do an MDM review to start out as a key process, as we said. Then we look at the external application that you wish to integrate. So if you have an enterprise cloud app like a Fusion CRM or a Service Cloud or a Salesforce, whatever third-party applications that are out there that you need to integrate with, we make sure that we understand, are on top of the APIs that are available. And we are, by the way, very experienced with most of these enterprise cloud apps. Next, we look at, if it's not a real-time integration that is happening today, what are the batch processes that are running, so that we can take a phase-wise approach and transition from a batch process approach to a real-time integration approach. We also study the existing batch processes that are available just to make sure that we don't miss any aspect when we move on to the real-time integration. Next, we design the integration solution architecture. Once we have studied your third-party applications and we've understood your master data management requirements, the data flow, the data formats across the different systems, the APIs that are going to make that data available. Once we've studied that, then we actually design your solution architecture for the integration. And this solution architecture, depending on the need, could be a SOA-based service-oriented architecture, or it could be a more of a thinner integration framework, so to say. It basically depends what the needs are and what the roadmap is. Next, we finalize which integration approach is best suited. Either it's a business service server approach, or it's an AIS approach, or a combination thereof. So we kind of identify that and map it to the solution architecture, so that we have all the pieces of the puzzle put together before we actually move on to the real implementation. So once we do the implementation, we do a validation. We usually plan 2 weeks to 3 week sprints, where we would integrate certain use cases, and then we would have your business analysts validate them with your business users. And we kind of do a quick back and forth. So we try to release as quickly as possible and as much as possible, so that wherever gaps are there with regards to data format, with regards to the fields missing, with regards to some other scenarios that were missed out in your use cases, those can be identified, instead of the waterfall approach, where you just wait for a whole month or more before we can actually see the integration. We prefer releasing every 2 to 3 weeks, something that's then can be demonstrated, that can be used by the end user, and can be commented on, and can provide feedback on. So here's a quick, if you are interested about my profile, as to where I'm coming from. Just to wrap the session here, we also have a training program that we've been running over the past couple of months, where we cover all the basics of your business services integration. And you can find more details on our website as well, or you can drop us an email or call us on our 800 number that will show on the next slide. Our weekend batch is starting October 31st, and we're going to have Saturdays and Sundays 4 hours each for 3 weekends, We're going to cover a 24-hour session there. The other, we have a weekday batches starting November 9th on Monday. And that's both of them are expected to be on 7 a.m. Eastern. So you are welcome to register for that. There are two different rates there, one for the corporate and the other for independent individual members. So feel free to reach out and we can discuss what can we do with regards to that. Here's our contact information. Feel free to give us a shout out. And we would be glad to now take a quick look as whether there are some quick questions that have been posted, and then we'll respond back to them. Okay, so there is one question that we've got. What is a better approach, BSSV or AIS, and when to use what? So as I explained earlier, business services is a comprehensive integration framework which can integrate your event to pretty much any device and any channel. However, from the user experience perspective, your AIS is utilized where it's more real-time integration required. So if there's an IoT, a smart device integration, your AIS is a better approach. If there is a mobile app integration, although BSSV can also work, Oracle used to use BSSV for mobile app integration, but then now they've switched to AIS because it's faster, gives a better user experience, and it's more sort of real time. Okay, any other questions here? Okay, so the next question. Okay, so the next question, what does it take to have a team up and running with a business service server project? Here's a bit typical thing about business services. It requires your C language expertise, it requires your Java expertise, and it requires your XML and SOAP expertise. So if you have programmers who've come from a C background, but do not have Java skills, they need to concentrate a bit more on their object-oriented Java programming. If they're coming from a Java background, they need to understand a little bit more about C++ and the core even C business functionality. And my guess is they're coming from Java side, they would at least have a bit of knowledge on XML as well. But if they don't, XML and SOAP is a key prereq. So you should be able to parse your XML, map the data between XML and your C business functions, pass them on there, etc. So the best way would be that, if you have an in-house expertise, that's wonderful, and you can use that one person to kind of be an on-job trainer for the others and kind of take from there. But if you do not, it's a good idea to go with a consultant and get your first initial project started with them, and have them, once your core development starts and your in-house resources are trained as well, then you can obviously have some sort of managed services arrangement with the expert consultant while doing your heavy lifting inside your company as well. So there's different scenarios, different approaches that you could utilize when you get into business service server. However, one thing needs to be very clear, that business service server development is quite different if you compare to your standard NER or form development or report development exercise. So you just need to make sure that you don't jump right into the project without understanding overall possibilities that are available. The other aspect I would say is the CNC part. Most of the time, especially for the service consumers, there are some very typical scenarios, some very typical settings with CNC, which most of the CNC who have not worked on BSSV before have challenges with. So it would be a good idea to kind of get some outside help on that as well. Other than that, it's technology. Once you kind of get a hang of it, you can then move on. You can start out with simple use cases, and then once you get more comfortable, then you can start tackling more complicated business processes that you can integrate with your E1. Okay, can you take one more? Okay. Okay, is there any best practice for integrating with your mobile apps? Yeah, so we've already kind of covered that. The best practice is to use REST API. However, business services are being utilized there. If it's a consumer app, I would recommend AIS. If it's a enterprise, in-house mobile app for your employees, even your BSSV could fit the bill quite nicely as well. So it kind of depends on what the scenario is. Thanks a lot for attending this session, and looking forward to any further questions, feedbacks, comments from your side, and we would be glad to respond back. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Bye-bye.